Hey, thanks and welcome back. I know we're coming in a little bit early today, but we're going to talk. We've got Russell here. He's in house today.
Finally, it's good
Um,
to be back.
he's going to talk about some should felons carry firearms, and we're going to get in that discussion and some other things Russell wants to talk about. Of course, he's now a defense lawyer for some of y'all that don't know, and he is also, he is, used to be a federal prosecutor. Sorry, that was my wife. Oh, and I want to say a shout out to the Abilene chapter for Girl and a Gun. They are traveling to go to a training conference, and there's three or four carloads of them, and they're going up to Colorado. And I just want to give them a shout out and give them, tell them, basically, I hope they have safe travels. Of course, my wife's with them. So,
Okay. Wait, are they listening to us?
yeah, they should be listening right now. Hopefully, they're listening. I need to check that text real quick.
Yeah, that's a good partner.
Uh, Hang on. I don't. Yeah. Uh, yeah. I don't know what she's. But yeah, they're traveling, and I'm trying to get her on. I don't know where. I don't know what that question was.
Do you get questions in real time?
Well, Jessica should see some in real time, and we need to start reading those off definitely. Um, but I hope they have a safe travel. They're going to do really well. They're gone for about 10 days. I think there's like 10 of them,
Oh wow, that
11
sounds
of
like a
them.
fun trip.
Oh yeah, it does. And they're gone. They're gone. She needed it. She needed a break. She works nonstop.
Well, you
And
got to put up with you too, right?
I know, right? And she definitely needed it, and the other ladies, they definitely need it, and they have a lot of fun. I'll put up some videos, and they'll send me some videos, and we'll put something together for them, and it's kind of a cool thing for them. I know that there's going to be a lot of people up there this year, and they've got people, and of course, I've got to give USCCA a shout out. Have you got in? Have you talked to them yet?
I talked to them a few months back, and my intention is to fully endorse and participate and be one of their attorneys
They
in
are
their network.
they are a good organization. It's a good thing. I've always, like I said, I've preached that till I'm blue in the face because I truly believe in their product.
Yeah.
If I didn't truly, and we do all this training all the time.
Well, what I love, I mean, in our private conversations,
Hmm.
you've been a strong advocate for theirs because, and it's clear that you believe in them, and so,
Yeah.
and that makes me want to believe in them, right, as an
Well,
organization.
well, they do cover all our schools, all our school districts that we train in, and I've got to, they have to have the best. And that's another thing we have to get. That's one of the things I need coming up in June. We need to schedule one day up in June,
Okay.
and if you give me a couple of dates, we can send that out to all the school districts and get them in here, and you talk to them and kind of tell them what because I like police officers and stuff. Like I told they're covered. They have that they have somewhat of immunity and things like that. But when you have school guardians that are training every month, and they're doing really good, and they know what they're doing, they have no protection, nothing there to help them, nothing. And that's where USCCA, because it doesn't matter, they're going to get sued.
Yeah.
And USCCA, that's why we've got them, is because they're going to cover that with them.
Yeah, and they allow you to pick anyone in their network, and they 100% covered the cost, right?
Yeah, and it's not yeah, no, you don't even have to be in their network.
Yeah.
You don't even have to be in there. I mean, it's like if somebody rear-ends my car, I mean, I don't have to take it to their shop. I mean,
Yeah.
I can take it wherever I want to take it, which is kind of nice because you can pick whoever you want to represent you.
You know what? So what I liked about it when I spoke with them was, I've gotten asked by probably over a dozen organizations to be a part of a network, and I've declined, partly because it comes with strings, right?
Yes.
And they made it so abundantly clear to me that the priority was the client, and they said, we're not going to put a cap on what you can do. We're not going to tell you about your strategy. We're not going to limit you financially. Your job is to go out and win. And that resonated with me because, I hate to make this, a pitch. Obviously I'm not paid or anything like that, but I was really impressed with how they kind of took the shackles off, and they said, we want you to be the best advocate possible.
And that's when we've had some of those conversations and stuff. And it's not just necessarily a firearm. It's anything that you use for something, even a dog.
Yeah.
Even your dog. That's crazy. But the biggest thing that that they pay your civil suits, because I've tried to tell people over and over and over, and that I understand some of these companies come out and they say, hey, we're going to fight your civil suit. Russell, go ahead.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long it takes, 10, 15 years. But the fine print, they don't pay your civil suit. They say they're going to fight it. But the problem is they're not insurance companies. They're just, a group that's kind of put together, and you're paying in. And 98% of lawsuits end up settled out of court.
Yeah, I think that's probably a low estimate. It might even be higher. I mean, it's shocking. I can't get to court. So I'm a trial lawyer. Our firm's done over 500 jury trials amongst all of us. Some really seasoned lawyers have been practicing for 20, 30, 40 years. And early in my career, you could really kind of push back. But nowadays, it's really, particularly in civil litigation, it is almost impossible to get to trial. It's as good as I do a lot of plaintiffs' work where I represent people. I also do defense work. But you can really push back because a lot of these lawyers on the other side haven't tried cases, right? Or maybe they've done 2 or 3. And so when you got hundreds of jury trials experience, it puts you in a great position to settle a case.
And that's what I try to tell people, is because, I mean, it is cheaper to settle than it is to fight a civil suit.
Yeah.
And I have to be that 1%, but we're not going to go there. But it is cheaper to settle. And so what the problem is, and we had a student in class that had one of these, and I'm not going to say which one, but everything was good. Everything, the shoot was good, everything, nothing. But the problem is the family sued him. And one of these companies that said they'll fight it, blah, 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 NDA'd him and settled it out of court.
Wow. Well,
the problem with that is he got stuck with the bill. He don't have that type of money. He had to sell his house. Oh. But that's the type of stuff you have to really. So I tell you, tell people when you look at these things, when they say, oh, we'll fight them 10, 15 years, find a civil suit that company has won.
Yeah.
Because they won't pay it. Remember, and I guarantee you, if they've been in business 4 or 5 years, 10 years, they've had them come across their desk. So if they really truly fight them for 10 years, 8 years, 5 years, don't you think they'll have a winnable case somewhere?
Oh, you betcha. Yeah, no, they're going to have it. Here's what I'll say, though, just as a caveat. Most, when you get sued, most of the time you're going to have some form of insurance, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make financial sense for the other party to pursue litigation against you, especially long term. And so, what often happens is you have these policy limits. It might be 30,000, or it might be 100,000, or it might be $1 million, whatever it is. So generally, what happens is you are litigating, being aggressive, and at some point, the other side tenders their limits, meaning, look, we waved the white flag, we're going to give you the $1 million. And essentially, what the law, at least in Texas, is that you can't recover any additional amount if they timely provided a policy limits payout. And generally, that's kind of what happens in complex litigation. But you never know, right? There could be other alternatives. And you would think if someone's been a practicing lawyer doing litigation for 5 to 10 years, they're going to have trials, or you're going to at least have an idea of what kind of outcomes they're getting for their clients.
Yeah, that is very true. All right. Well, again, I hope Sean and them have tuned in. We're going to tell them again because I don't think they had tuned in a while ago. But when we first talked, I think they were trying to figure out. They're traveling. I wish y'all best safe travels. I hope y'all have a lot of fun up there. Russell and I both.
That's right. Well, hey, not only safe travels, I'm hoping, I'm praying that they cut loose a little bit.
Relax.
Yeah, relax a little bit. It's, I'm sure they got like the weight of the world. Just,
Yeah.
It's, anytime you're a wife or mom, you already got the weight of the world on your shoulders, and then you throw in being a business owner like you guys, and then just being involved in the community, man. So hey,
Well, and she's got to go up there and put on, I guess, a presentation also.
oh, that's stressful.
For some other, I guess, some ladies up there. But she's got a really the organization, the group here are wonderful. I can't really speak. I don't know a lot of the other groups. I've met a lot of them. But I can't speak for all. But the ones I've met have been phenomenal. But the ladies that she's traveling with, those are really good. I had one of them on the show 2 weeks ago, and we talked about women carrying.
Wow.
We are seeing a huge increase of women carrying, women wanting to carry, women wanting to protect themselves. And we talked about that of, different, so if you're a woman or if you have a wife, send last week's the last podcast over to them. Let them listen to it because it's a huge growth.
Yeah.
And it just keeps growing. Shawnland has over 240 members just in the Abilene chapter.
240 members. Wow, that is remarkable.
in her chapter just in Abilene.
Sounds like they have a great
town.
camaraderie in that,
They
in
do.
That group.
It's awesome. Your wife needs to get into that.
I know, man. Yeah.
You need to say, hey,
Yeah, come on, Charlene. Yeah, well, I need the invite.
Boy, what's up, ladies? Y'all are out there listening.
This. All right, so this. I want to segue into a story. I had a client come in the other day who carries, right, and just generally keeps a firearm in her purse, and she had gotten into a vehicle with a friend or a coworker. Car gets stopped, and there's a vape pen in the car, and it's unclear, at least to law enforcement, who the pen belonged to. I felt strongly that it wasn't our clients, but nonetheless, because there's some ambiguity as to possession and ownership of the pen, it was attributable to my client, right? And so she gets arrested not for the vape pen, but for unlawful carrying of a firearm, which is fascinating, right? And so it's one of those things you really have to be aware of your surroundings and who you're with, just by being in vicinity of a vape pen that could be attributed to you, right? It made the possession of the firearm that would have otherwise been lawful, illegal under the state of Texas, allegedly. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, I went and took a drug test the very next day.
Yep. And that's the advice.
Yeah, I'd have had a hair follicle test, a piss test. I would have been all up in there trying to get everything done.
That's right.
But I tell people also in class, one of the things, how many times have in your life, and I'm going to ask y'all out there, how many times in your life have you ever been prescribed hydrocodone?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe for a back or an injury or something like that. How many times have you had it in your vehicle? Are the odds that you could have dropped one of those hydrocodone, even from a year ago or 2 years ago, down between your seats, or something to that effect? You get pulled over. You've got a gun on you. You're totally legal. You haven't had any back problems. It's not like you're taking hydrocodone now. Officer asks you to search your vehicle. You go, oh, go ahead. He finds a hydrocodone pill.
Right.
We got problems now.
You're right. You got
got big problems. And I tell people and I have a lot of law enforcement. Don't get me. We back our blue. Okay, but there are things that happen like that. And that takes me back to before I started JM4 Tactical. I got pulled over on my way to work. Okay, and I work night shift, and they pulled me over. He kept asking me, "Where you going?" I had my work uniform on. I said, "I'm going to work. I'm going to work. I'm going to work." And then another officer pulled up, and I'm like, "I'm going to work. That's all I'm doing is I'm going to work." "Well, do you mind if we can search the vehicle?" I'm like, I mean, I'm trying to just hurry up because I'm running. I'm going to be running late for work. I'm like, "Go ahead and search," you know. And they went through my entire vehicle, and it was clear, you know. But when I got back in, there was a $20 bill sitting on my console, and I guess he found it underneath the seat. It had just fallen at some point, sometime. I don't know when. And I was thinking, that was worth the search right there.
How about
Got
that?
$20. But it goes back to that same thing. That was $20.
Yeah.
How easy is it to drop a small pill, or something to that effect, or somebody else drop a small pill?
Yeah. Well, look, I've seen it, and on the other side of the coin, you have the very intentional act of some to distribute, pills, and so law enforcement hears these stories all the time, right? Like, oh, that's not mine. I don't. How did that get there, right? But in the mix of that, there is also inadvertent and unintentional possession, right? And where you might drop a prescription pill and later on, right? And under the law, if you have a controlled substance, a prescription pill, and it's not in the container that it's prescribed in, then technically that possession could be deemed to be unlawful.
What about you have the prescription bottle and it's expired
So
in your console?
Yeah, I would think it's sufficient then. I think you would be allowed, as long as at some point it had been prescribed to you, and the controlled substance that was in the pill was in fact the prescribed. Now, I think if you keep it for too long, I think you got a problem. And I think that's why when the pill falls out, it's been there for a year or two.
Yeah, and you just forgot about it, or you never even knew that you dropped it. That bottle's gone. You've tore the label off of it. It's not even anywhere around anymore. You got problems then.
Yeah, what do you think? Do you think cops should be able to arrest someone if they're found in possession of something like a vape pen or a prescription pill without the bottle?
That goes back, and that's a very hard, because you're putting it's a catch-22 basically.
Yeah.
I think cops need to make the right judgment. If they pull somebody over and they know that they find that pill and they're able to do this, and they go, this, I doubt this person owns this, or they may have dropped it, because they should have they do have the ability to crush it up. And I guess that goes back to, what kind of attitude are you giving them? Yeah. What kind of, are you being a dick to them? Are you being civil? Now, I'm like I said, we have bad apples in everywhere, every profession there's bad apples. But a majority of the time, I think if you're respectful and you're not an ass, I mean, your chances of them just crushing it up and throwing it away or something,
Yeah.
or a little bit higher than you just come out, F you're not,
Well, let me ask this then. I mean, and like you said, I have a lot of friends that are in law enforcement, very supportive of our law enforcement community. I think it's a tough job to have
Yes,
right now.
it is.
But should law enforcement have that kind of subjectivity to enforce, right? Should they be able to arrest you just because you were a jerk and there's a crime?
They can't say they arrested you because you were being a jerk, so they decided to charge. They're just going to charge you with it.
Yeah, I mean, but I hear what you're saying, and I've seen it. And one of the things I always advise clients is to be respectful, right? When I'm speeding down the road and I get pulled over, the first thing I do is put the road out my window, put my hands to the side, I pull out my documents, and I'm yes sir, no sir, and I think that's just a pretty good life advice when you're dealing with
Yeah.
people in a position of authority. But not everyone acts that way, right? Sometimes you're annoyed, or maybe someone feels like they've been targeted. Um, maybe they feel like they've been profiled, and they don't feel like being cooperative, and they get a little mouthy. You know, is that something that law enforcement should have the ability to factor in determining whether or not they want to arrest someone?
Technically, no, but it's human nature.
Yeah.
You know, they might be a little bit nicer if you're respectful to them. It just really depends on the officer. I mean, but again, I mean, we have bad apples. You could be really nice as you possibly can to one of those bad apples, and they're still going to assert their authority.
Yeah, exactly.
But a majority of them, you know, I've been pulled over I don't know how many times, and I've always been very, very respectful. Roll down all my windows, of course, because they're illegal. Shh. Uh, uh, and been very respectful. But yet, like, one time I got pulled over right here in Abilene, you know, in the JM4 truck. And I was, you know, technically I was going a little over, not much, but I was going over, so he pulled me over. But it was almost like he kept getting closer and closer and closer, and I was having to lean over. And I don't know if he was trying to smell alcohol, but he asked me several times, "Where are you going? You know, where are you coming from? Where are you going?" And this isn't like 12 o'clock during the day on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just going over here to the gun store. I'm coming from JM4. And he just kind of kept getting, and I'm kind of leaning. I'm like, you want to drive? I mean, you want to
Yeah.
jump in?
A lot of times, you know, you'll have officers that try to peer inside the vehicle to see if they see anything in plain view that's unlawful, maybe a contraband.
But they're not supposed to break the plane of the window.
Exactly. And if they do, right, I would argue for my clients that is an unlawful search.
Yes.
And so just if they break that plane, they're looking in. I've seen this happen. In fact, several years ago, when I was a federal prosecutor in front of the Honorable Sam R. Cummings, we had this issue come up where law enforcement searching someone that had a firearm in the vehicle, and the firearm was actually on the inside of the driver's door, and he had peered into so far in that you could see kind of backwards and see this firearm. And look, Judge Cummings was brilliant. I was terrified of the man the entire time I practiced because he was so brilliant, but generally had a reputation for being favorable to the government, right? And there were these stories that in 20 years he had never granted a motion to suppress. I don't know if that was true or not, but on this day, he grants the motion to suppress because this officer had kind of breached the plane, and you could clearly see it on the video. You know, the defense lawyer was right, but you know, this happens all the time. I see it all the time in my practice. And whether it's because law enforcement doesn't know any better, or they're just not used to being held accountable, and they're just like, "What's the big deal? Let's get this on." And a lot of times, defense lawyers won't challenge it. So it's good to remember to keep a firearm safely secured and kind of out of plain sight if you're traveling.
Well, you know, you're, and also, you know, I watched one of those shows the other day where I think it was something like but it wasn't cops. They pulled this individual over. They got a 911 call, and they pulled this individual over because a lady on the highway had said that the individual pointed a gun at her. And all she was mad. And she had seen, and the first thing I caught when they pulled him over was he had a Second Amendment type sticker on the back of his vehicle, and I want to say it was an AR or something. So I guess that made her automatically think, oh, well, he must have a gun.
Yeah.
And she's mad, whatever, he cut her off. I don't know, but she called him in. Well, he got pulled over. He didn't have a gun on him at all.
Wow.
Nothing at all. So my recommendation is, you know, I do drive around a JM4 truck. I'm, you know, there's some stupid, crazy people out there, but I have cameras inside my truck. I have cameras, dash cams, inside cams, back cams, you know, because that's always, I've always worried about anti-gun individual saying I pulled a gun on them driving down the highway, and me just minding my own business, not knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
And some lunatic anti-gun individual saying something like that. Well, I have evidence showing that, I will have that. But I carry that in case, I have that for my protection. But SD cards go thrown out the window.
I like the idea of having the videos.
Oh yeah, they do. They can protect you. They can cover your butt. They can cover you. If you're not doing anything wrong, they can actually protect you.
Yeah.
And something like that. If the guy would have had something like that, that's an easy fix. Show him the video.
Yeah. Piece of cake, right?
I mean, I'm just gonna turn it over and let you see. I mean, you want to see me singing some crazy? I'll turn that SD card over and be like, go for it. Watch it.
So I want to go back to our earlier conversation. Do you think it should be unlawful, or cops should have the ability not just to give you a citation, but actually arrest you if they find a vape pen or a pill and you're in possession lawfully, otherwise lawfully, of a firearm?
That's a hard question. I mean, because you do have criminals out there, or people that that they know that are doing things they shouldn't be doing. They pull them over. They may be, and there are people out there that have not been caught yet that are doing dumb shit, but they also have a legal right to carry until they get caught.
Yeah, I
don't know. That's hard.
It is. I mean, it's tough. But look, it ties in kind of neatly to what I wanted to talk to you guys about today.
It's just hard to put. You're putting handcuffs on the cops and not letting them be able to make the right judgment.
Yeah, but I feel like you're also providing a constitutional
But
support for every citizen in this great country, and I really don't think it's just me. I think this is going to come to a head in the next few years. So, the law around firearm possession it's changing and evolving so rapidly right now, more than probably any other point in our lifetime. And I get excited about it because it's just different. So as a practitioner, someone that really enjoys learning about criminal procedure and criminal law, one of the more hotly contested areas right now is gun ownership and gun possession. And so, let me kind of break that down because it kind of feeds into our whether felons should possess it. And generally, the bigger question is, what is the government's authority to disarm a citizen, right? And ultimately, we look to the Constitution to determine where those rights come from. And of course, there's probably a lot of strong advocates of the Second Amendment that's listening to this podcast. And for 60 years almost, I think it's 1968, people that have been convicted of felons have not been allowed to possess firearms.
And a lot of they can a musket.
Yeah.
But really, the Second Amendment doesn't state, it doesn't say anything about, you can only carry them. The Second Amendment is giving you the ability and the right to bear arms.
Right.
And
let me just add, it doesn't say you have the right to bear arms unless you're a felon. You have the right
it doesn't say any of that.
Right. You have a right to possess arms unless you have a vape pen with you. You have a right to possess arms unless you have a prescription pill, right?
It goes back to, and you're exactly right on that. And it goes back to if you're a dangerous individual that's been convicted of, doing bad things, and you've spent 20 or 30 years, 25 years in prison, and you're finally getting out, and you are known for hurting people, I truly believe you should not own one. Because if you have a history of violence, and I mean violence, rape, child molestation, things like that, you have a history of having mental issues already.
Yeah.
So I don't think, but people, if you look at Reagan, had the war against drugs. Look at the people that were thrown in prison for how many years for having weed, marijuana. Look at marijuana now. It is nothing. It's, and these people were getting out of prison. They spent 20, 30 years. They're getting out. They're going, holy crap, this stuff's legal now.
Yeah.
But they don't have a right to carry a firearm. They don't have a right to vote.
Well,
so why are they paying taxes?
Yeah, right. And I would say yet. I think the law is changing rapidly, and I actually think it's gonna trend towards support of the Second Amendment. So this is fascinating. I was at a conference this past weekend. It's called the Bench Bar Conference for the Northern District of Texas. All the federal judges in the Northern District show up, and this judge who I deeply admire, he actually practices in West Texas. A gentleman by the name of Wesley Hendricks. Guy is absolutely brilliant. And he said something to me that really resonated. He said, if originalism has come home in a manner that the legal community needs to address, and they got to understand it. And so what does that mean, right? Well, look, there's like these doctrines, these views of how the Constitution should be interpreted, right? And you have this theory of people that said, really we should have this originalism, this perspective of what did our founders mean when they drafted it? What were the laws then, right? And we should look at it as if this was 1776. And for years and years, that originalism kind of fell out of favor. And then I think that the term I've heard most frequently is the living constitutionalism. And it says that the Constitution is a living and breathing document that evolves over time, and we have to be able to interpret it. And for many years, that's kind of was the more accepted trend. And what we're seeing, at least in firearm law, is this acceptance of originalism. And so there's some cases out of the Fifth Circuit that's come back, which have come out of West Texas and the Northern District, which to me is fascinating. But they've essentially said we are changing the way we've taken this one size fits all. If you're a felon, you can't have possession. But you know what? That's not what our founders intended.
Yeah.
When they wrote this back in 1776, you could be a felon and still possess a firearm, right?
Today they would be felons.
Yeah.
Our founders would be felons today. They would have already put them in federal prison.
Well, it is so fascinating to me because you have this enormous philosophical shift back to originalism.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, if you want to know if you can possess a firearm, you need to be asking what was allowed back in 1791, right? And so, okay, who can be disarmed then? And the Fifth Circuit has kind of adopted this test called the felony by felony analysis. And essentially, it's very fact specific. We're going to look at the type of felony this is. Look, and what they've kind of said is, look, if it's a violent crime, like you've alluded to, back in 1776, that person could have been disarmed and prevented from possessing a firearm. And so today now, they're going to prevent that person from possessing a firearm. But let's talk about, prescription pill.
You can sum prescription pills up in the same category as marijuana or peyote, is what you'd want to sum that up into, because it's a drug. A drug is a drug. Whether it's created today or was created, available back then, it's still considered.
But I think we have to go deeper in that analysis. I mean, it is, even if it didn't exist then, I mean, could you have been disarmed in 1791?
No, not for smoking peyote.
Yeah. And I think that is where the court's going. It sounds insane, right?
Yeah.
It sounds insane that we're actually pulling text from 200 years ago to determine if it would have been legal or illegal. And if it wasn't illegal back then, there's a good chance it's not going to be legal today.
And that's the thing is like I said, if we can't walk around with peyote out here in the middle of the street,
Right.
we'll get arrested and go to jail.
Yeah, yeah.
But you could back then.
I got your back if
Yeah.
you get.
Okay, you got me.
Yeah.
The thing is it's just like muskets and ARs. Things advance. Things get, you know, um, are getting better and advance over time. So peyote's still around, but we're going to list that as the same thing um, as a hydrocodone or anything else out there. It just advanced. But an AR, it should be looked at as the same as a musket
Right.
because all it was, both of them go bang, both of them have a trigger, both of them shoot something down the barrel of it, and both of and you use gunpowder. So that being said, we should look at that, and if felons are allowed to have muskets, so a nonviolent one should be allowed to have a
Yeah.
AR,
Well, and
period.
I think what you're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years is this tidal wave of change in firearm law. I think if you've been convicted of fraud, that is the underlying substantive charge, what has made you a felon, you're going to see your gun rights restored.
And you're voting.
And well, let's hope. I think everyone should be able to.
Well,
to
if
vote.
you're paying tax, remember,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
are they paying taxes if they're not
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
taxation by representation?
Without representation.
Without
Yeah.
representation, basically what they're doing.
So I think hopefully that's good news. I mean, we get calls, if not daily, certainly weekly, from all over the country asking about restoration of gun rights. And can you explain this? Because this state has it a little different than what this state allows. And if the state allows it, does the feds trump it? The answer to that is yes. If the feds right now still have a blanket prohibition, even if a state permits, you still would be prohibited under federal law. But putting that aside, I think what you're going to see in the next 5 years is we're gonna change 60 years of precedent in firearm ownership, and you're going to see nonviolent offenders be able to possess a firearm, and I think that makes sense.
It does. It totally makes sense. Because, I mean, if somebody went in for a nonviolent thing and spent 5 years, or got 8 years, spent 3 years, and going to spend 5, as soon as they're off probation, or parole, they should be able they should serve out their sentence and then have their rights right back. I don't see a problem with that as long as they're nonviolent criminals. I 100% support that because there are good people out there that have done dumb shit and
Yeah.
gotten themselves in a little bit of trouble and, may get 2 years probation or 3 years probation, but they're going to be a felon. And that's just that's not right for some of these things.
Well, and I see it as a pretext a lot of times to stopping criminal conduct, right? Maybe law enforcement can't find this suspect that they believe is responsible for serious violence or other violent offenses, or distributing significant amounts of drugs, but they do find them with a firearm, and they use that as the basis to hold
now
them
they're not going
accountable.
to be able to do that.
And I think it's going to be really hard to do that. I mean, I had a client once who had put red dye diesel into his truck,
Hmm.
and
That's avoiding taxes.
yeah, and so he's becomes a felon, right?
Yes.
And he gets put on probation. Well, this is a good old country boy, right? I mean, grew up on a farm. I mean, hunting and shooting with your friends is just kind of part of life out where we live. And a couple years later, he's still on probation. Well, he gets pulled over and he's got a rifle in his pickup, and they convict him again. They charge him with firearm or felon in possession of a firearm, and this time he goes to prison. And so what, man?
That is getting stuck in the system. The prison systems make money because they're all privately owned.
Right.
They make a lot of money. So they push for these laws to stay like that. Because if they have less prisoners, they make less money. It's a corporation is what it is. And once you become a felon or even on parole or probation, and you're supposed to, if you get in any trouble in the next 3 years, or 5 years, you're going to do the rest of your time in prison. It's really hard to go that 5 or 10 years without doing anything.
Yeah.
The very minor stuff that we could get away with because we're not on parole or probation, they'll get henned up for and thrown in jail. That's not,
Well, you don't want me to get speaking on this, man. I think I think we have the best criminal justice system on the planet. I really do. But it's certainly not perfect. I think our system's broken. I think there's a lot of things we can do better. And, as a prosecutor, I had a very narrow scope because I just didn't know. I was very much a thin blue line individual. And then you get exposed. I spend my days hearing stories from people that have been accused of crimes. And sometimes these real tic-tac violations
can get them in a lot of trouble.
Man, I mean, I was in court last week with someone that's living on the street, but they're still showing up to their drug counseling. They're still reporting, but they moved to violate them because they weren't paying their $25 monthly fee.
See, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're out there. They're trying their best. They're doing their best. I mean, it's not like Abilene Housing's real cheap, thanks AI Center.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a whole different subject. Somebody said, "Oh, well, a majority of the people they're hiring are in Abilene. They live in Abilene or from Abilene." Yeah, okay. Then why are all the houses gone and we see all these fluctuation of people? I'm sorry, but that's not correct info there.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. Is small things once you get into that, put into that kind of program, into that situation, you start going down that road on parole, on probation. It's hard to really get out of that because the minor stuff can get you.
Well, and so this is personal to me, right? I mean, I'm a first generation college student. I grew up in a very working class blue collar family. My father was a 12-time convicted felon, right?
Okay.
So, there were times I remember as a kid where my dad probably definitely deserved to go to prison, right? But there were other times when we just couldn't afford good representation, or it was some tic-tac violation, and we were doing everything we could to just keep the lights on, man. Yeah. And that story is not unique to me. I mean, that is a story that hundreds of thousands of people in this country are dealing with. And look, I get it. If you're making bad decisions and you are committing violent crimes, you're doing out and you're breaking the law and hurting other people, man, that's a problem. You need to go to prison. But
exactly. My biological dad spent 20 years in Pelican Bay for murder.
Yeah.
Got out and then went right back for attempted murder. Now he's out. Like I said, the sperm donor, not the biological dad, the sperm donor. He's never been in my life. Don't ever want him in my life. Right. Don't care to have him in my life because he's out. People like him don't need a gun.
Yeah.
He does not need one at all. He'll never need one. But he has spent probably, I think, 35 years total in prison. I know his first go was Pelican Bay. I think it's out in California.
Well, so it sounds like there's a consensus amongst it, right?
Yeah.
There's this dichotomy of people, and at least two camps. So there's people that are dangerous and deservedly so should be disarmed, and then there are people that are currently prohibited from possessing firearms for criminal conduct from their past, but maybe it was for a nonviolent offense. And you would agree with me. You think that those individuals, there should be a path forward to.
Oh yeah, as soon as they've served their time, they should have their firearms back. Whether it's 3 years of probation or 2 years in jail, and then they're getting out and they're spending the next 2 years on parole. As soon as they end their stuff with the state, they should have their firearms back. They should have 100% of their rights back the day their parole ends, the day their probation ends. or the day they're released from prison and they're not on parole or probation.
Let me ask you this: do you think someone convicted of drug distribution should be allowed to get their gun rights restored?
No, unless you just had a whole lot of fentanyl.
Yeah.
If you had a chemical that could take the lives of a bunch of people.
Yeah. You're saying you think they should have their rights restored unless it was like fentanyl.
Yes.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
that right there can take the life, and it has taken the lives of a lot of people here in America, here in the United States, and all over the world. If you're carrying that, you know that's going to take the life. If you're, because they put it in all kinds of narcotics already.
It's insane. So the guidelines, which is kind of the formula that determines how much prison time an individual charged with a federal crime gets, recently just changed, like maybe a couple months ago, to make the punishment for fentanyl and analogs significantly harsher than it was in the past. And this is interesting. At this conference I mentioned I was at for the Northern District of Texas, the U.S. Attorney, a gentleman by the name of Sam Raybould, guy is brilliant. He went to Yale, graduated from Yale, played professional soccer. I worked with him when I was at the U.S. Attorney's office, had a lot of respect for this guy. He has now come back, and he has been appointed by President Trump to lead the Northern District. And he spoke at this conference. And I'll tell you, man, he was fired up about holding people accountable that's distributing fentanyl.
Oh, yeah.
He had mentioned and violent crime. So he mentioned that just in the Northern District, they've hired 30 new federal prosecutors. I mean, that's unprecedented. That's probably more federal prosecutors that have been hired at any one time in the past 25 years. And he was very pointed. It was, we're coming after fraud cases, and we're coming after violent crime.
Well, the thing is, like back in the day when we grew up, you went to a party and somebody was smoking weed. We didn't have to worry about fentanyl being in it. You didn't have to worry about, you didn't have to worry about taking a hit off a joint or and dying because of fentanyl. We didn't have that problem.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you're putting fentanyl into drugs like weed and things, and these kids are taking it and they're dead.
Oh, well,
they're dead.
Yeah, I mean, look, so when I was a federal prosecutor, I worked closely with DEA on a lot of these cases. We did one of the first fentanyl cases in America, and the drugs were coming directly from China. And what really stood out to me is two things. One, at the time, the DEA was working with the government to categorize fentanyl not as a controlled substance, but as a weapon of mass destruction, because it was so dangerous and it could be airborne that it could literally kill millions of people if used in a nefarious manner. And then the second thing that took away is that a lethal dose of fentanyl is the size of a single grain of salt. So if you have a single grain of salt that you ingest of fentanyl, it is enough to kill an individual. And which is, I mean, that should be terrifying to the American public.
Oh, yes, it is. And nowadays, we hear these kids going to a party and they're taking a hit or they're doing some dumb shit that kids do, and they're dead.
Well, and I think that's something else our listeners need to hear. I mean, look, this isn't hyperbole, right? These aren't fear tactics. I see this almost every week in my practice. You just Google it. You can see these stories, and this isn't inadvertent. This is design and intentional efforts by the cartels, right? They are putting fentanyl into other types of drugs like Molly and marijuana to make it more addictive, where they have to come back and buy from that supplier. And you got some lab down in Mexico that might put 2 grains in instead of 1 grain, and boom, you're dead. And so these kids are showing up. I mean, high school kids, college kids.
Well, they're getting the fentanyl from China.
Yeah.
It's shipped into Mexico.
That's
where it comes from.
Yeah, it is, man. If there's any public service announcement we could give, and I know this is more about firearms but I'm telling you, man, this stuff it's dangerous. If you're a parent, I mean, you've got to talk to your kids about this because I understand, right? People want to experiment. They they're not going to listen to your folks. They're going to go out and they're going to do what they want, but it's not like it used to be, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's sad that it's a sad situation, but you're right. I mean, it's not like it used to be. So yeah, anybody caught with fentanyl should be charged
Yeah.
to the extremist, because that is taking the lives of the American people. Because American people just do dumb shit anyways.
Well,
Growing up,
yeah,
when
I
you're
see.
kids,
They're kids, but
I don't condone kids getting out there doing drugs. By the way, I do not condone that. So what I'm saying is, kids are dumb. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, there's even adults that are dumber, but than most kids. But kids, they get out there, even young adults and things like that. People do dumb shit, but it shouldn't cost them their life to snort a line of coke or to hit a joint. It shouldn't be their life.
Well, let me tell you, you're about to see a lot more enforcement, particularly out where we live. I imagine every United States Attorney's Office in America has this directive from the White House to be hyper aggressive in prosecuting these cases. But I can tell you straight from the horse's mouth, right? I heard the U.S. Attorney Raybould say, "Hey, I am personally going to every city in West Texas, and I'm meeting with sheriffs, and I'm telling them, what resources do you need to find these people that are distributing fentanyl? We're here to help."
100%.
And it's coming. I obviously am. I represent people accused of crimes. I think everyone is entitled to zealous advocacy and aggressive representation.
But you have morals.
Yeah, but look, even as a moral code, I get it. And who knows why someone maybe they inadvertently take a pill that has a fentanyl in it, and then they get addicted, and now they're feeding their habit because that's what the cartels want. But look, I also believe that accountability is a form of love, and that more of a kind of a biblically based principle. And so a lot of times what I see my role as, if I can make sure that their constitutional protections are enforced and hold accountable to their government, to their burden, then it becomes, well, what is a fair outcome for this individual?
Mm-hmm.
If someone has a vape pen and they also have a firearm that's otherwise lawfully possessed, do I think 10 years in prison would be a fair and just outcome? No, I don't think so. And so, I feel like I get to play a very important role in the criminal justice system, whether that be someone accused of something as serious as fentanyl distribution or something as, in my opinion, insignificant as having a vape pen while also lawfully possessing a firearm. But you talk about getting some hate mail. I mean, there's a lot of people that have some really strong opinions on lawyers in general and defense lawyers in particular. And I can't really blame them, right?
Listen, we all have a love-hate relationship with lawyers. We hate them, but we love them because we have to have them.
That's right. Yeah, I get a lot of grief until like their son gets arrested or they, I had a guy once. I was at a golf tournament, and we were sponsoring one of the holes, and this gentleman wouldn't participate because didn't want to sully his good name by playing this hole where a defense lawyer had sponsored it. Fast forward like 2 years, his son gets a DWI, and person was way more gracious to be involved.
now he's gonna be your friend.
Yeah. So look, I get it. I don't think I had any friends with defense lawyers when I was a prosecutor. I've come full circle. But look, I love my job. I love that I am in a position to help people. I can give guidance to people on, hey, when can I lawfully possess a firearm? When can I not lawfully possess a firearm? And being able to educate people and give people second chances is kind of what gets me going.
And everybody, they do deserve that second chance. They don't deserve to have their, just totally stripped unless they're just a mean individual to other people, aggressive. But yeah, I mean, I agree. So Russell is a defense lawyer. I mean, he is a very good one. So if you need one, you need to call him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wish I could help everyone. We actually turn down probably 90% of the people that want to hire us, not because, I'm a jerk, but like I told you earlier, right? I grew up poor, so I don't want to take someone's money if I don't think I can truly add value. And so a lot of my conversations, I'm telling someone, look, I don't think we have a good angle. I know the value of a dollar. I don't want to take your money if I can't help. And two, a lot of times if someone isn't honest with me, right? My value is only as good as you allow it to be. And so, but for those out there, if anyone ever needs help, or has questions, if you just want to call our law firm and just ask a question about federal firearm regulations, I'm happy to answer those questions free of charge. We actually have a dedicated member of our staff who their sole job is to answer these questions that we get around the country.
So you definitely need to give him a call. I trust Russell. That's who I would be using,
Yeah,
100%. I'm not going to, BS. I've got Russell coming in. He's actually coming in June. We need to schedule that to talk to all our school districts, to kind of introduce himself to them, especially in West Texas area. So and give them some legal advice and answer some of their questions. And that's the school districts that are carrying firearms on property and premises of the school to protect our kids, because our kids are precious. And these people are putting their lives in that situation to turn around, and they need to be able to do the right thing legally after the fact.
Right.
We know they're going to do the right thing up to that, but we need to protect them afterwards also. And that's kind of where Russell comes in, and he's going to talk to them. And they've got a lot of questions. I know I've told a couple of schools, and they're pretty excited about it.
I'm
because
excited.
They've never had nothing done like this for them. They don't know, So,
We're going to knock it out of the park. We're going to make sure
are.
they're in a good position.
Yeah, we are. We're going to love this one. But yeah, so you got anything else?
I think that's it. I'm excited to be back. I appreciate everyone's patience out there. We've been busy defending our clients and standing up for people's gun rights all over the country. I mean, I'm jumping on a plane here in an hour, and then I'll be in Houston on Wednesday, Tyler on Thursday, and then Washington D.C. on Friday. So it is, we're running and gunning out here.
Okay. Well, guys, make sure you check out Russell over here. What's your website again?
So it's lorfinglaw.com. So LORFING law.com.
So check him out. It's right here in Abilene, Texas. He's got billboards pretty much all over West Texas.
Right.
But if you need a new holster, coffee, any of that stuff, come JM4 Tactical. All our products are made right here in Texas, and we try to use all American-made materials also. Yeah. So we do our best. You got anything else, brother?
No. Hey, you guys have a great Sunday. Enjoy spend some time with your family.
Yeah. And hey, girls, y'all, again, Girl and a Gun out there, Abilene chapter, I want to say good luck to y'all. I know you are going to have a blast, safe travels, and we love and care about every one of y'all.
That's right.
All right. God bless. Y'all have a good weekend.
God bless, guys.